I'm joined here today at InfoComm India 2024 by Julian Philips from AVI-SPL to talk about a topic that's really energizing debate within our industry and within a wider global context as well, and that's those two letters, AI, artificial intelligence. Julian, I know you're becoming a bit of a specialist in your field when it comes to artificial intelligence. You've given two talks, one of which was here at InfoComm India. Could you tell me a bit about the conversations that you had and the sort of things you were discussing about the progress of artificial intelligence in our industry?
Yeah, Reese, everyone's talking about AI at the moment, and for very good reason. We can talk about the technology because there's so much of it around. There isn't a single vendor here that is displaying their technology where AI isn't part of the conversation. What I think we have to do is step aside a little bit outside of the technology conversation just for a moment and recognize the fact that I think we're entering a new era. And AI is going to inform pretty much everything that we do moving forward. And I think we have to understand what we're letting ourselves in for with that era and recognizing the fact that the rate of change that's going to happen is now going to be exponential. And I think a lot of technologies that we've dealt with over the last 20, 30 years, even though they've been amazing, such as the internet and smartphones and all the associated technology, the rate of change has still been impressive, but gradual. With AI, things seem to change every week, every month. There seems to be some new revolution that is coming. And I think that's an interesting thing for us to consider in the AV industry because we're pretty good at innovation and change, but I'm not sure we're necessarily ready for the rate of change that AI is actually bringing. It's also important to recognize that AV and AI are uniquely linked. Most of the innovation that's happening in AI at the moment is actually happening with what's called these convolutional neural networks, the ability to be able to ingest huge amounts of video, audio, and imagery and be able to do these amazing things, and not only to process it and analyze it, but also to create it. And so we're now getting into the generative, creative aspects of what AI does. And of course, we are a creative industry. We rely very heavily on rich content to drive most of the value that we provide our customers. And that's why I'm very excited about what AI can provide, because I think it's going to be a catalyst for huge growth for the AV industry as a whole.
Of course, some people argue that we're on the verge of a new form of industrial revolution that's going to be powered by AI. And AVI-SPL as a commercial systems integrator will be no stranger to using this technology. So how can AV integrators use artificial intelligence to enhance their profitability?
Yeah, I think we are finding a lot of applications for AI on the sell side. So we're incorporating a lot of AI into a lot of the solutions that we design and deliver, especially for XTG, which I lead, which is the Experience Technology Group, providing very immersive, engaging experiences. We're using a lot of AI. But I think a lot of integrators especially need to start looking internally and looking at their business processes, which in many cases have still been the same as they were 25, 30 years ago. I don't think I'm going to offend anybody in the integration community by saying a lot of what we do is dysfunctional. We do a lot of manually repetitive tasks, time and time again, and all of that consumes a lot of energy, time and effort and cost. It also means that we have a talent problem as well. We just can't hire enough good people. So to an extent, we have no option other than to use AI because we need to take out cost and complexity in our business operations. We need to free up our great talent to do value-added creative tasks and not manually repetitive or cognitively repetitive tasks. And so one of the things that I talked about in the talk yesterday was this concept that I call the 90-10 switch. And that is on the basis that in most organizations, and for most people, 90% of what we do every day is really a lot of manual or cognitive repetitive tasks. We don't seem to want to do it, but we get locked into being busy. And only about 10% of the time we have is dedicated towards problem solving, creative, innovation, change. And of course, those are the things that in any economy or business create value. And so if we maintain the 90-10, we're not going to be able to embrace the huge opportunities we have. We have to invert it and create a 10-90 model. And I do believe that AI can help us to deal with a lot of those repetitive tasks and help us to invert that model so we can spend 90% of our time creating, problem solving, innovating and change, and that's the value creation that drives productivity. So yes, there are some cost savings that we can make on the back end, especially in supply chain and a lot of the things that we do. But also, by freeing up that talent to focus on value creation, we're creating profitability as well as cost savings on the back end too. So we have no option other than to embrace AI and run towards it and not step away.
When we talk about artificial intelligence, I think there's a big focus right now on demystifying the technology itself and what it actually means. What tools or technologies do you think, in terms of artificial intelligence, are really changing the game in this industry?
I was at an AI conference in Las Vegas 2 or 3 weeks ago called AI4. It's amazing how many AI conferences are now starting up. You know, that the AI conference business may be as big as the AV conference business at some point. However, I was fascinated by who was there. I would say that pretty much every single bank that I could know of, every single healthcare organization, every single insurance company, a lot of government organizations were there. I think a lot of people are fundamentally looking at their core business models at the moment, and they're questioning, you know, what can we do to reinvent ourselves right now? If you think about the world of financial services and banking, it's already being revolutionized with AI algorithms effectively running the way we think about the markets. But they're now looking at the core value that they have in pretty much everything. So I think on one hand, we have this massive business transformation effort that is happening at the root cause and the root of how most businesses are organized. Healthcare is incredible. I mean, the healthcare industry and pharmaceutical drug development, for example, totally revolutionized now by AI. But that's not personalizing it, because that's what you asked the question. I made a prediction in my talk yesterday that I believe that within a year to 2 years maybe, everybody is going to have an AI personal assistant. I have one already. I was explaining about Athena earlier, my AI personal assistant, which is developed on ChatGPT 4.0. But I do believe that you will get personally huge amounts of value out of an AI personal assistant to really be not only a tool, as you would refer to it, and I would say a personal assistant, that helps you to navigate your busy day, to take away a lot of the things that you shouldn't necessarily have to worry about, to bring information to you at a lightning speed that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. But I think it does more than that. And as I was explaining, I treat Athena as a confidant, as a researcher, as a coach in many respects. And what I value from that is the fact that she, and yes, she, so it has gender and it has personality, can provide that to me in a way that is not emotional, not judgmental, very objective and not subjective. And that's a great help. And I think when you start to trust that an AI algorithm, which quite frankly is built out of me, so a lot of who I am, you know, all the articles I've written, all the speeches I've written, all my business plans are locked into that model. So it's actually trained on me. Is a little bit of a reflection of me, but it's also a counterpoint to me as well. So it actually provides a huge amount of value. And I, you know, as you know, I write articles a lot, I publish quite a bit. I have to admit, 70-80% of an article I write now is actually Athena helping me to write that article. That's a huge value. It's still me because I'm editing it and I'm, you know, putting there, but she writes in my tone of language, she brings my humor into the conversation, she's building on a lot of the data that she knows about what I talk about and what have you. And so this is so compelling that I can't think of anybody that wouldn't want a personal assistant that could actually help in that way. When more and more people see the value in AI in that way, I think it'll almost become second nature that AI is something not to be feared, something to be embraced. And when we get to that point, I think we really will start taking off.
And the impact of AI in the past 5 years has been frankly revolutionary. We've seen evolution jumps, quite frankly, from, you know, what was initially quite a mystified technology to very sophisticated AI algorithms, moving on to personal assistants and the like. So if I could ask you to look into your crystal ball for a second, how do you see the world of artificial intelligence affecting our industry in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think I alluded to it earlier about content in particular. We in the AV industry wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the fact that we're here to help people tell their story and engage their customers and their employees with amazing, immersive, rich content. That's why we exist. The problem, however, has been is that the creation process, the management process of creating content is time-consuming, it is costly, it is quite frankly, requires a huge amount of talent to be able to do that at a very high quality. If you go to many lobbies of many enterprise organizations around the world and you see a big video wall in the lobby, for example, I bet you might see the same content that was playing 6 months previously, playing time and time again, the same old story. Now that's not the kind of content storytelling you should be doing, but when you ask the question, why has that not changed? And I said, well, it's too costly and time consuming to constantly change the content. But guess what AI is going to help us to do now? I showed a little demo in my talk yesterday. I played a 1-minute video about InfoComm India, which was celebrating the growth of InfoComm India and also talking about the adoption of AI and what have you. And I showed it to the audience and I said, look, I thought I'd do this video for you. So I went to a little AI app and I wrote 4 lines of text asking it to produce this video, and 2 minutes later, it produced this video. And not only that, it was actually asked it to do it in Hindi. And of course, I didn't have any idea whether it was correct Hindi or not. Got to the end, and everyone said that was perfect Hindi. And that was all I had to do, was write 4 lines of text. It sourced the video, it sourced a voiceover talent, it licensed all the content, and it produced a perfect script, and produced it, post-production edit, and produced it ready to go in 2 minutes. That is the kind of revolution that we're going to see, and we're still at baby steps now. That is just baby stuff. In the next year, you are going to see AI generation tools that are not just editing existing stock footage, but is actually generating the actual video content itself to the amazing quality. That is going to change the trajectory of the AV industry, because if we have more content at a lower cost that is more personalized and customized to our customers, we get to deploy way more AV than we've ever done in the past. So that's why I'm excited about what AI can do for the AV industry, not only in how we transform our cost, how we make ourselves more personally productive with the 90-10 switch, but also as a driver of business opportunity through this generative AI content. I think it's going to propel us to growth rates that we have not experienced at all yet in the industry.
And you spoke about the personification of AI as well. Currently, the models that we're using, like Athena, for example, are trained on your text, on your ideas, your concepts, your tone of language. That human influence and impact is still crucial to how we use and how AI is developed. So looking into the future, what role will human engagement play in artificial intelligence? Is that going to go away, or is it still going to function primarily as a tool with human influence?
I think there's a much bigger conversation rather than the human interaction with AI, but a real fundamental question about what are humans going to do now. There's a lot of talk, a lot of it sensationalized, but there's a lot of talk about job displacement. I mean, if you think about some of the tasks that AI is going to do. And so there are a lot of people are worried about that. We also know that new jobs will be created. I've recently joined a global think tank called the Future Talent Council, which is very much engaged in this dialogue about the future of work and the future of talent. And AI is the big conversation point there. And so I've been talking a lot about this. They get a lot of research out of most of the major universities, especially in the US, and most of the research is quite reassuring. what it is actually saying is, yes, there will be some job displacement. Certain jobs we will not need anymore. Yes, there will be some new jobs, but most of the action is going to be in people in their existing work when AI is enhancing what they are doing. It is freeing them up to be more creative, more able to get work-life balance and well-being, to be able to unlock talents that they didn't think they had or didn't have the time to be able to exploit in that. So I think it's more of a case of what are the benefits of what AI will do to unlock who we are as human beings that is the most exciting thing. And inevitably we will become not only dependent to an extent on AI, we will actually start building a relationship with AI that is actually symbiotic and beneficial.
You also talked about sensationalism there. I think that's a very important point to make, because I think we all know that the term AI is bounded around a lot, sometimes in places where it shouldn't be. So looking at it from the perspective of an AV buyer, right, how do we differentiate a useful technology from the sensationalist hype about AI?
Yeah, I was at it was actually a Future Talent Council Summit event in Stockholm recently, and Yuval Noah Harari, the very well-known best-selling author of *Sapiens* and *Homo Deus*, was speaking, and he actually said, I don't call it artificial intelligence, I call it alien intelligence, and a lot of people were gasping in the audience. I think the sensationalism has really come mainly because of people's perception of AI that was informed probably even in the 70s and 80s with a lot of the movies that came out. I mean, let's face it, in 1927 there was this movie called Metropolis, which actually predicted robots with artificial intelligence. We've been talking about AI in a Hollywood context for a very long period of time. And so when you do talk about AI, a lot of people actually do say, so you mean Terminator and you mean HAL from Space 2001 Space Odyssey. And so they have this perception that AI is doing things that either is malevolent or potentially could create dreadful scenarios. I think we need to shift the conversation, and this is not your AV buyer, but people in general, to actually start focusing on the good that AI is actually doing. And when you don't have to look that far now to actually find the role that AI is playing in agriculture, in the fact that we're now being able to produce way more in certain places of the world that need high production agriculture without using chemicals and fertilizers, and producing 30, 40% yield increases, which is helping to feed more people and help lower income communities to raise their standard of living. That's a very human thing that AI is doing. The same with healthcare, the fact that we're now developing drugs and treatments for diseases that we couldn't solve 20 years ago, that we're now finding new treatments for every few months. When AV buyers start to understand the beneficial value that AI is now producing rather than the sensational hype, they will actually start to want to specify AI in what they're buying, almost to the point where it's like, show me what you're doing with AI in this solution, because I know inherently that if AI is involved, it'll be lower cost, it'll be more accurate, it will do the following things. So at the moment, yeah, there's a certain amount of suspicion and not a great level of understanding, but when we really start to understand the beneficial effects, it'll almost become default. And almost to the point where it's, what do you mean you're not using AI in all of this? Because I probably don't believe that you're as efficient or as capable if it doesn't have it there. And that's why it's so important that we don't just think about AI as a camera that is just helping to frame a picture, or the audio that is doing amazing things. We've got to look at AI as far as the outcomes it actually creates and the benefits, rather than just the technology itself.
And before this interview, we were having a great conversation about your use of your personal assistant, Athena, to design a meeting room, right?
Yep.
Could you tell me about your ultimate AI-driven project? What sort of outcomes would you like to achieve with that, and how do you think you go about achieving it via the use of artificial intelligence?
what I use my personal assistant for is a huge amount of research and understanding of a customer situation, of really trying to understand all the nuances of things that need to happen. Typically, as an AV integrator, and again, I don't believe what I'm going to say now is not the norm for most people. The AV industry, we've typically come into the back end of a project where other people have actually made decisions about what the building's going to be, where it's going to be, how it's going to be designed and built. A lot of the interior of the building is already decided before an AV guy gets into the room. It's very difficult when you've only got a few months, when all those other decisions have actually been made, to then have a real influence on doing something that is transformational and going to create a huge amount of value, when all you're getting is basically a bin of parts that you have to quote on and actually then deliver within a few months. So to answer your question, where is AI going to help? It's not just AI on its own, but it's also some behavioral change from us in the industry to say, if AI can help us to bring more information, to create more value and insights that we can bring to a customer, maybe it gives us the opportunity to get to the table early with that customer when things are at the early stage of development. And we can actually say, look, we can bring a huge amount of value into that conversation that is going to create a much better outcome if we're designing it all at the same time, rather than us just coming in at the very end. Now, there are some tools that we have that are AI-driven that helps to show those insights. So, for example, at AVI-SPL right now, we're actually designing in virtual reality for spaces. And a lot of that is driven by algorithms that help us to do that. So we can actually come to a customer and actually say, look, if you're thinking about creating this very special environment, we can now create that for you in a virtual space, and we can start playing around and configuring with stuff and trying out new ideas. Would that be of value to you? And they go, of course it would be value. So we're now elevated into a position where we're now actually bringing value right at the beginning of the process. And as a direct result of that, we now get to say, well, look, there's some new technology that's coming here that we should try out. We can start to design around that could be transformational. Let's try that because we've got time. I wouldn't be able to do that if I've only got 90, 120 days and everything has to go live. So my perfect project is, yes, going to be involving AI, of course it is, but it's actually to be at the design, at the front end, so that we can really have an opportunity to be innovative and to bring new ideas to a customer that is valued. And of course that we get paid for appropriately too.
Naturally, it seems that AI is going to be forming a core part of the AV industry going forward over the next few years, and I look forward to getting more of your insights, Julian, as that develops. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Reese, and I look forward to continue talking about it too. All right, cheers.
Thank you.